There's an expression that the higher the ape climbs, the more you see his bare backside. This absolutely sums up Boris Johnson. This man is now so exposed. He's got no underwear on. Everybody can see everything that there is about him now. And it really is very difficult to see how this can be sustained for much longer. I think the idea that Boris Johnson is more concerned about removing John Lewis furniture from his house than removing cladding from tower blocks around the country really captures the shallowness of this and how opportunistic he was in the general election to be claiming to speak for the working man and for ordinary people in trying to prize away those red wall seats from the Labour Party, which they did successfully. I'm old enough to remember when Gerald Ratner destroyed his own company almost overnight by making disparaging remarks about the quality of the stuff that they were selling to the public in the form of costume jewellery. Here we've had a Prime Minister apparently being grossly offensive to the majority of the public for whom John Lewis is an aspiration. What's good enough for most of the British public is not good enough for Boris Johnson and his girlfriend. This is quite a remarkable own goal, and it shows a lack of insight and a real stupidity which you wouldn't expect to find in someone who claims to be a leader. If it's true that the Prime Minister really spoke of letting the bodies pile high, then this man is not fit for office. This is a disgrace. It's an insult to all those families who've lost loved ones and to families who may still lose loved ones. It's reckless talk. It sounds from a variety of reports as though he was in a very bad temper that day. And so it doesn't seem out of the question that, in fact, comments to the effect about letting the bodies pile up may have had some verification. I think the role of the traditional mainstream media over the last 12 months is very interesting. And clearly, in the beginning, the traditional conservative newspapers, the Times and the Telegraph and the tabloids, the Mail and the Express and others, were very loyal to him and were slow to really realise how badly things were going wrong. I think what we've seen with the erosion of trust over the Dominic Cummings affair and other things that we've spoken about on these interviews has really rattled good people who are conservative supporters and who actually have integrity and believe in having a society that's based on the rule of law and not on people bending the rules to line their pockets or because of their peccadillos and personal life being run in a way which most people would find unacceptable. And so we've seen a split in the media emerging. And also, you know, you have to remember that the people behind a lot of the media, people like Murdoch, who are serious about power, are worried about the longer term impact of this on the credibility of the Conservative Party to form a government. And the Conservatives are nothing if not ruthless when it comes to keeping control. And, you know, when you look back over the last 100 years and the proportion of that time where we've had Conservative administrations as opposed to any other kind of administration, it's been a remarkably successful party. So their reputation for competence, financial competence, administrative competence, and so on, is very important to the Conservative Party. So we've seen it before. We saw what happened even with Margaret Thatcher, who was, you know, in their own terms, their greatest leader of the 20th century. We've seen how quickly the plug was pulled when the reputation for competence could no longer be sustained. The emergence of the blog by Dominic Cummings last week, you know, is pure Greek tragedy. Here we have the you know, hell hath no fury like a little man scorned. You know, that Boris rejected him for his own political ends, the way he's rejected so many people in his career, in his scramble for the top job that he didn't know what to do with when he got it. Cummings, oh my God, you wouldn't want to be on the wrong side of a man who knows where all the bodies really are buried, and where every decision that was taken or failed to be taken, you know, is rest. Remember the intimate relationship between some of those people in the inner circle there, about who went out with whom before, who was very close friends with other very close friends in the early days of the Johnson administration. I mean, Dominic Cummings must have so much that's dynamite that Johnson really wouldn't want to see the light of day, but he may have no choice. Well, now we've reached a point where nobody knows what to believe when the Prime Minister says anything or denies anything, and all those people who are loyal to him are now being torn between the good values of truth and transparency and the need to protect their leader. So this is Shakespearean or Greek tragedy or something, but it's building up to a crescendo. The problem is, you know, that we've got a pandemic still going on, and it's reminiscent of what was going on right at the beginning back in February, when the Prime Minister was distracted by his personal life, by his dalliances with different women and his divorce and so on. So he wasn't focusing on the pandemic. So presumably he's in a similar state of mind now, that he's got all this stuff piling up about cronyism, allegations of corruption, you know, the illicit use of funds. And here we are at a critical point in the handling of the pandemic, where it still could go either way. You know, we've had this very successful vaccination program, but lurking in the wings are new variants. There's this huge pressure to let the country get back to so-called normal. People wanting to go off on foreign holidays to Spain and Greece and so on. Goodness knows why anybody would want to do that when we've got the lesson from last year, from February half term, when the skiers brought viruses back and planted them around the country and provided the basis for the original pandemic. There are stories now of wealthy Indians using private aircraft to get out of the country. I wonder whether all those small airports around the UK are being policed for who's coming and going. You know, this virus finds a way, and we can't afford to let up. We've got to keep our guard up. And my mantra for this now is we should be hurrying slowly, not hurrying quickly, but hurrying slowly. My concern about this is not a party political thing. It's not even a political thing. It's a public health thing. This guy is in charge of our pandemic, of our piece of the pandemic. And this is a pandemic. You have to remember, as we glory in the success of the vaccination program, that the overwhelming majority of the world's population has yet to have one jab of vaccine. In Brazil, the situation is dire. There are thousands of people dying every day. The virus is rampant. And in other parts of Latin America, we've seen the scenes from India, which are worse than the scenes that we saw from Wuhan right at the beginning. There was an interview on the BBC radio the other day from a woman who said, every household in her neighborhood, there are cases of COVID. That's never been like that here, even at the worst time. You have to remember that in many of the urban areas in India are not these high quality middle class environment, which now exists for about 100 million Indians, there are over 1 billion other Indians, many of whom are living in slum conditions, overcrowded conditions, in the new cities that have grown up in the last 20 years. And you remember too, that just as in earlier times in the UK, wealthy people live nearby to poor people. They can't escape from the virus because it's round the corner, it's out on the pavement when they go out from their house front door. And the desperation of people there is, tangible when you see the interviews. You see Alex Crawford on Sky News reporting from Delhi, and you really feel the terror that there is, where people can't access the most basic care. They're dying in the street. They can't get treatment. The black market is rampant with oxygen supplies, and that's what we are faced. Now, that situation is where the virus will continue to mutate. The virus will mutate and travel around the world. People who haven't been vaccinated, including younger people in countries that have done well, like ourselves, could be vulnerable to a new variant. Young people are going to be gathering in music festivals, in other big gatherings over the next few weeks and months. And we are back to where we were last summer when we eased the lockdown off and we gave the virus a new lease of life. Is that what we really want? What will happen come October when it cools down again, if there are new variants circulating and we still have people who haven't been vaccinated, but maybe the vaccine will not be so effective against some of the new variants? We're getting reassuring noises from some of the government advisors, but you have to play on the side of safety in this situation. People want to move on. They want to move forward. They want to put the last 12 months behind us. Clearly, the vaccine program in the UK has been so successful, it's given us all a great deal of hope. The political situation is a mess and needs resolution because we don't know what's going to happen next. The world is very unstable. We've seen what's happening politically in an increasing number of countries. We've seen the alienation of young people. We've seen in this country that the under 35s have suffered most in terms of job losses and the way in which the kids in school, the university students, have been treated very badly, and they're very angry. This will have political consequences. I hope it doesn't happen, but I think it's likely we're going to see more problems on the streets this summer. These are things which require high quality political leadership and statesmanship if we're not going to see a lot more confrontation. We need mature politicians. We need good leadership. We need people who can bring us together. But what we've got are people who are pushing us apart. And that's the big challenge for the rest of this year: building trust, getting decent political leadership, and finding common ground. If you'd like to remind yourself of how badly the government got it wrong, it's all documented in here. I hope this will be used as evidence when the inquiry finally happens. But if you want to just remind yourself, you can always pick up a copy of Blinded by Corona.